Hello all and welcome. My name is Candida Pucci and I'm a career consultant within the university's Career Center. Today's workshop presentation will be about resume writing. Okay, so today I will be going over the following topics, which are do's and don'ts, resume basics, which include formatting, content, and things to avoid, accomplishment statements, supplemental documents, which include references and cover letters, and then additional tips as well. But before we dive into the important stuff, let's do a quick trivia. What is a resume? A brief summary of your accomplishments. B, a document that tells every single detail about your work history. Or C, a professional self-marketing tool. If you selected answer choice C, you got that correct. A resume is a professional self-marketing tool as it allows to display your different skills, experiences that are relevant to a position that you are interested in. Okay, so starting with the do's and don'ts. For your do's, you want to make sure that you see our full resume guide and utilize this as a tool to getting started to your resume or enhancing your resume. You can find our full resume guide on our University Career Center's website at career.utdallas.edu. You want to make sure that you always customize your resume based on the job description. And then you also want to make sure that you have your resume reviewed by a career consultant. As for your don'ts, you want to make sure that you do not use any personal pronouns on your resume. This includes I, my, me, we, they, he, she. So make sure you do not include those specific personal pronouns. You also want to make sure that you do not keep personal data such as your birth date, pictures, address, marital status, anything of those, anything that's personal in that way, you do not want to include it on your resume. And then you want to make sure that you do not use a template. We like to express this a lot to students. Do not use a template. You want to always make sure that you start your resume off or edit your resume with a blank Word document. Always start your resume with a blank Word document. Okay, then moving forward. So for formatting, for your length, you want to make sure that your resume is at 1 page. However, if you possess extensive experience that's relevant to the position or the career goals that you have and what you are applying for, then a resume over 1 page is appropriate. But you want to make sure that it, again, is relevant to what you are applying for. As for margins and font, your margins are recommended to be no wider than 0.5 to 1 inch all the way around. And then your font size for your name should be 14 point to 18 point. And the body text needs to be 10 point through 12 point. As for your layout, you want to make sure the sequence of the sections of your resume are in order that presents your most relevant information first. For example, if you don't have any relevant work experience, you can put your academic projects above your work experience. You want to make sure that you do not use a paragraph style in your resume. So when you're writing your descriptions, you want to make sure that you use bullet points to help them stand out and make them easier to read for employers. And then as for job titles, degrees, and etc., there are considered important information. So you want to make sure that you leave those on the left side of the page, while dates and locations are considered less important. So you can always put those to the far right of your resume. And then lastly, a template is not a good way to distinguish yourself from the stack of resumes. So you want to, again, make sure that you review our resume packet for inspiration on how you can format your resume, and just use those ideas to formulate your own personalized design. And then moving forward to types of resumes, okay? So we have different types of resumes. The three here are the three top main resume types. So that is your chronological resume, functional resume, and your combination resume. Your chronological resume is where you would list the most important or most recent positions at the top. And then as for your functional resumes, you usually create those to highlight relevant skills that's more important. And then combination resume is just a blend of both, where you can emphasize both your relevant most recent work experience, and then for your skills, you can also include those relevant skills. Okay. The most important thing to remember when it comes to your resume, though, and then keeping the order that they're in, is that you always want to list the most relevant information at the top of your resume. That is very important. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, so resume categories, okay? So resume categories, these are just going to be the most common resume sections. You may not need or have all of these on your resume, but these are the most common ones. Of course, you want to have your identification and contact section. Of course, that's required. And then you'll go into your summary. Some people call these professional summaries or objectives, but these are optional. So if you want to include them, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Then you'll have your education section, your skills section, that is optional as well. If they apply to you, then you can include them. And then experience section, of course. Okay, and then the experience section can include work experience, volunteer experience, organization, certifications, different things like that. Academic projects, and then also keep in mind that you can also include relevant coursework, okay? And then moving forward, so just to talk a little bit about headings or headers for your resume. You want to make sure that you always keep it simple. Your name should not exceed 14 to 18 point font. You want to make sure that you do not include your full address. Including your city, state, and zip code is totally fine. Make sure that your email address is professional. Again, you don't want to have an email address that's hottie256, nothing like that on your resume or for your email. So if you do not have a professional email address, you want to make sure that you create one of those before submitting your resume to employers, okay? And then again, as we mentioned earlier, for your don'ts, you want to make sure that you do not include any kind of pictures or photos on your resume. Okay, and so then for your summary section, as mentioned earlier, these are optional. So if you want to include them, you can, but you do not have to. So for your summary section, it basically sums up your experiences, goals, and then what you'll be able to bring to the company within 2 to 4 sentences. This section can include things like years of experience you have, a specialty or an area that you have the most experience in, soft and or hard skills that are relevant to the position, achievements you've accomplished that brought in results, career goals or passion that you have for your career, and then keywords utilized within that job description posting, okay? So those are different things that you can include in the summary if you're wanting to include one. I also say this is a good time to express yourself just a little bit to employers about how you are qualified for the position. So again, you won't go into too much detail. You want to keep it at 2 to 4 sentences, but you can also show that to employers. Okay, and then here's an example profile summary, okay? So with this example, they say highly organized and diligent student with 1 year of experience in customer service, adaptable with an ability to work independently as well as with a team to help the organization reach its goals. And then moving forward towards the education section, okay? So it is very important that this section is documented correctly, okay? We recommend that putting your degree above the university or institution to highlight what is what it is rather than where it was, okay? So if you can include your degree type at the top above the institution, that would be recommended. Again, you want to make sure that you list degrees in reverse chronological order. So most recent to least recent. Graduation or expected graduation, you want to make sure that you include that to the far right. So that would include the month and the year. The start dates for your education section does not really matter, so you don't need to include that. So just including when you expect to graduate or where you graduated is really what you really want to include. And then when you're writing the your degree type and the name of your major, you want to make sure that you write out the full name of your degree type, okay? So don't abbreviate and say Master MS. Instead of saying MS, you want to write out and say Master of Science, and then you'll say in computer science or whatever your major is in. Okay, and then you can also use, instead of in, you can say Master of Science, semicolon, major, whatever that major is, okay? And then moving forward, you can also include these other things within your education section. So minors, if you have one, you can include an area of specialization or specific concentration that you have, your thesis or dissertation if applicable, the name of the university. And then, if you have your GPA, you can also include that 3.0 out of 4.0. You want to make sure it's a 3.0 or better if you include it. And then if you have that GPA that is out of 10, then you can include that number as well. And then relevant coursework can also be included within your education section, which is optional. Okay. And then, so talking about relevant coursework. So if you were to include a relevant coursework section, you can do it in a column format. But then if you wanted, you can even incorporate this type within your education section. But I like to recommend students, if they're going to include a relevant coursework within their within their education section, then including how they list them versus using the column format. But the choice is yours. Now, when creating these, if you're going to use columns on your resume, you want to make sure that you put bullet points for each of those courses, as the ATS, which we'll talk a little bit later, applicant tracking systems, will not be able to read those courses correctly if they're not in the bullet point format as they are in columns, okay? So again, we'll talk a little bit more about the ATS in a little bit. But again, these are your two different ways that you can write your relevant coursework under your education section, or just create a different section for it. Okay, so moving forward to skills, okay? In your skills section, you want to list the most, the professional skills that you have that make you qualify for the positions that you're applying for, okay? Employers will indicate the skill set that they are looking for within those different job descriptions or internship descriptions. So you want to make sure that you look closely to those descriptions and postings. And if you have the required skills, be sure to list those, okay? So in general, there are two types of skills. They are soft skills and hard skills. So soft skills include things like interpersonal communication, organization, or attention to detail. As for hard skills, they are more often tied to specific tools, software, or knowledge, such as like speaking a foreign language, for example. Hard skills will vary by industry or job type. So that's why we like to consider those more so technical skills. And then as for the soft skills, they will tend to be more universal. So that's why we like to use the title for those as transferable skills, because if they're universal, most times you'll be able to utilize these skills within different positions or experiences you have. Okay. And then here is an example of what a skill section might look like on your resume. So make sure to customize the skill section based on what you're applying to. If they say that they want someone who is proficient in Microsoft Excel, then you need to put that on your resume, okay? So showing those different skills, not only by listing them, but making sure that you incorporate them within your accomplishment statements. Okay. And then moving forward, so for your experience section, um, experiences can be a part-time job, on-campus jobs, internships, summer jobs, job shadowing, research, teaching, leadership roles, military service, volunteer experience. So these are all different experiences that you can have and include on your resume as they are relevant to the position you are applying for, okay? So you want to make sure again that these are relevant and transferable experiences. Even if your work experience is not relevant and you are still at one page, you want to make sure that you include it, okay? Because all experience is good experience. Even a part-time job can show skills and show that you can hold a job, which employers like to see, okay? Um, and then when you're including your experiences, you want to make sure that you include the most relevant experience towards the top of your resume. So again, talking a little bit about that reverse chronological order, keeping things from most recent to least recent. And then an example would be your header should include the role, organization or company, location, and the date. So down here you see they have the job title, company, city, state, and then to the far right, dates of employed, and then the different methods that you can utilize for your accomplishment statements. I'm sorry. Alrighty, so moving a little bit forward towards your projects, okay? So projects can be relevant and transferable experiences that you can include on your resume, okay? So you want to make sure that when you do create a project or an academic project section, that you make it or format it similar to your work experience sections, okay? So including those project titles and probably the institution of where you did that project, if it's an academic project, having your dates to the far right, and then having those different accomplishment statements describing what you did or what you have accomplished and how did you get to that accomplishment for that project. Okay. And again, here are some examples of a project section. Okay, then moving a little bit forward. Okay, so we have certifications, trainings, awards, and organizations. So these are also additional sections that can be included on your resume. Okay, so you have professional development signals, which shows commitment to your craft. Okay, so these are good to show. So if you include any one of these, you want to make sure that you include the title, institution if applicable, year or month and year completed. And then you want to make sure that you do not list any expired certifications. I like to tell students that if you do have an expiration date for your certifications, then including that or whenever your renewal will be, but including that information can be helpful to employers. Okay, another trivia. Alrighty, so what is the best way to get my resume noticed? A, using pictures and colors on my resume, B, using a template from Word, C, customizing resume per job, or D, submitting a 3-page resume. If you selected answer choice C, customizing resume per job, you got that correct. Okay, so that's the best way to get your resume noticed is, of course, paying attention to those job descriptions or job postings and then customizing your resume towards that position. Okay, that's what's going to really get you, noticed by these employers, showing your different experiences, qualifications, and skills, things like that. Pictures, as we discussed earlier, you do not want to include those on your resume. Colors are usually part of format or trying to keep your resume more so personalized. It just depends on what colors, but you want to try to avoid colors as much as you can, except for those darker professional standard colors. And then as for using template, we highly suggest do not use any kind of templates. And then submitting a 3-page resume, you don't want to always include submit those. Especially if it has all of your experiences. You only want to, submit a resume that includes those relevant experiences, unless you have space where you can show, a different experience that shows transferable skills as well. And then moving forward, so as we dive into our second half, talking a little bit about accomplishment statements, you'll see on here is that, human resources, they'll ask you, I see you did well in school, but what real world skills do you have? So, gaining experiences are very important before graduating or going into the field of your interest, okay? So try your hardest to get as much experiences as you can so that you can show these things on your resume. Okay, so accomplishment statements, okay. Accomplishment statements are good because you can utilize these to describe previous experience, show the employer written proof of your results, achievements, and successes. When you're writing these, you want to make sure that you use an active voice, so using the strongest action verbs as possible. And I always like to tell students that you want to make sure that you use different action words for all of your accomplishment statements, basically. So at least those starting off action words, you want to make sure that they're very strong, and then you want to make sure that they're not repetitive, using the same ones. So try to, switch it up, use a thesaurus, anything that you need to find different action words. We also have a list within our full resume guide. Again, you want to also make sure that you describe more than what you did. Instead of saying, answer phones. How did you answer phones? How many phone calls did you answer a day? What was the result of answering those phone calls? Okay, so you want to simply show and not tell the employers the different experiences you've had. Okay, and then talking a little bit more about accomplishment statements. So mentioned a little bit earlier, there are different methods that you can utilize when creating your accomplishment statement section or accomplishment statements. When you're creating those, you can use these 3 different methods over here. So you have the STAR method, the SOAR method, and then you have the WHO method, okay? So starting over with the SOAR method, you can see over here, they start off with, for their statement, they start off with manage a technical crew. But by the end, once they got to result, it said manage a technical crew of over 20 people on a daily basis that increased production 3 quarters in a row. So these are different. This is what you want to utilize. These are the different methods you want to utilize when coming up with your accomplishment statements, okay? This helps you show and not tell your employer or the employer how you are qualified for the position. And then here is a complete accomplishment statement example. So you can say something like, coordinated and supervised 6 work teams consisting of 30 contractors and successfully completing the project within the established timeline while reducing project costs of 15%. Something to keep in mind and to shoot for when you're writing your accomplishment statements. Okay, another trivia. Many employers regard the description of experience as the most important part of a resume, okay? So why are accomplishment statements important? A, they provide an overview of your work experience. B, they tell duties or responsibilities gained from your experiences. Or C, they show you have the necessary qualifications and how you can add value to a potential position. Okay, if you selected answer choice C, you got that correct. Again, accomplishment statements help you show how you have the qualifications and experiences and skills for a different position. So it basically shows that. So you want to describe that to employers versus tell them, okay? Alrighty, so moving forward, supplemental documents. Okay. So for your supplemental documents, you can have references and cover letters. So starting with references, references are separate documents. So for those students who think they have to have available upon request on their resume, or actually go ahead and include a reference on your resume, you do not need to do that, and you do not want to do that. For one, you don't want to include references on your resume without permission. So always ask for permission before listing someone as a reference. Two, once permitted permission from that reference, then you will go ahead and provide them a copy of your resume. Okay. And then you also want to make sure that you compile the important information about those prospect references. So once you create your document, your reference document, you'll have their information on there for you to send out to the employers. So the different information you want to, compile on them is their name, position, or company, city, state, and zip code, and then your phone and their phone and email address. You can also see our full resume guide for examples of these. And then moving forward to cover letters, okay? So cover letters basically are a way to personalize yourself and then introduce yourself and explain why you are sending a resume to a potential employer for a job or position opening. You want to make sure that you do not repeat information found on your resume. Instead, highlight the best accomplishments and abilities that is relevant to that position. Again, you can use your resume to explain gaps in your cover letter to explain gaps in your employment, special circumstances, talents not fully showcased on your resume, and things of that nature. And then also you want to make sure that you tailor this to the specific position and company that you are applying for. So very similar to your resume, you want to tailor it to the specific position, but even more important for your cover letter, you want to make sure that you tailor it or customize it to the specific employer or company. And then again, cover letters are not always required, but can offer you an edge. So if they're not required, but you have the option of uploading a cover letter, I always recommend that students do so, because again, they can make you more competitive, offer you an edge, or whatever you may like to call it, but it would help you as a candidate and make you a stronger candidate, as many individuals do not submit cover letters if they're not required, so it can help you stand out. And then moving forward, so for your cover letter, you want to make sure that you have a heading similar to this, or a complete letter formatting way for your heading section of your cover letter, okay? So again, you can either do it like how you would have it on your resume, or you can do the letter format. And then again, when you're addressing your cover letter to someone, you want to make sure that you're addressing it to someone specific, or whether if it's a search committee, whoever it is, but you do not want to say to whom it may concern. So keeping that in mind when writing your header for your cover letter. And then also when you're writing this, think of it as a letter to the person who is interviewing you, okay? So for your introduction paragraph, you want to introduce yourself, tell the employer a little bit about how you found out about the position or the opportunity. If someone referred you to the position, then including that information will be helpful as well. And then you'll have your supporting or selling yourself paragraphs, which in those paragraphs, it could be one or two. You want to make sure that you describe how you fulfill the job's requirements by expanding on your skills and experiences. I also tell tell students that this area is a nice area to talk a little bit about, the company or organization that you are applying for the position in. Talk about something that stands out. So do research on the company organization and talk a little bit about, what stands out to you about that company or organization, and how it aligns with your different values, interests, or different skills and things like that as well. Career goals will be good too. And then for your closing paragraph, you want to make sure that you express great interest in that position. Thank the reader and inform the employer the best way to contact you if they're interested in creating an interview with you. So including your phone number and your email in that closing paragraph is going to be very helpful. And then just let them know that you'll be looking forward to following up with them. Okay, so additional tips. So as we begin to wrap everything up, I'm just going to leave you all with some great tips. Okay, so before getting started with your resume, you want to make sure that you, or I would say like not getting started with your resume, but if you are getting started with your resume, or if you're tailoring your resume, you want to make sure that you evaluate or analyze the job description, okay? So identify the key requirements in the job description like education and technical skills. Identify keywords by looking for repetition within that job description. You can highlight, underline, and write down important information from the job description. But those are the things that you really want to focus on when, starting or tailoring your resume, is evaluating that job description, okay? Because the goal is to use those keywords and themes throughout your resume so that the employer can make the connection between the position that they're hiring for and then your specific experiences and skills, okay? And then just briefly to talk about the ATS applicant tracking systems that I mentioned earlier. It is estimated about 50% of companies use an applicant tracking system, so ATS, which is a scanning system that resumes are fed through to quickly weed out the non-relevant resumes, okay? So think about it. Employers are not just taking those couple of seconds looking at your resumes anymore. Now they have a system where it's set to do that for them, okay? So these systems help employers reduce the time and cost of identifying suitable candidates by automatically eliminating resumes that do not include keywords listed in the job description, okay? So again, this is very important that you pay attention to those job descriptions. Even formatting can play a role in if an employer uses the applicant tracking systems or ATS, because you don't want to use any templates or any special formatting like including invisible boxes on your resume. You always want to start with a blank document and work your way down, okay? Another thing about ATS is that you do not want to copy and paste things into your resume, okay? As they are set to catch those specifics, okay? So again, making sure that you include those keywords, do not use a template, do not use invisible boxes or any special formatting of that nature. And then again, do not copy and paste things into your resume. It is imperative that you are presenting your most relevant qualifications to the employer throughout your resume, and then tell them about specific skills related to their position. Okay, and then some common mistakes to avoid. Overuse of bold, italics, underline, and caps. You do not want to do that too much on your resume. Keep it, to the minimum if you can, but also remain consistent throughout your resume when including those different formatting ways. Again, do not use pronouns like I, we, she, he, they mentioned before as a don't, so do not use any personal pronouns. And then listing position descriptions, not accomplishments. Okay, so you don't want to just go to a job description and say, okay, this is what I did in this role as a cashier. You don't want to just list those descriptions, okay? You want to, describe what you've done and also show some kind of outcome or accomplishment result, or even the purpose for doing that specific duty or responsibility or project. And then you want to make sure that you avoid not customizing your resume to the position description. You want to make sure that you customize or tailor each of your resume to each position that you're applying for if needed. Okay, and then leaving out employment history you don't think is relevant. Okay, so as mentioned before, if space permits within your one page, where you can show another experience that isn't relevant, but shows that you were able to hold a job or hold an experience for a certain amount of time, or even just have a job, have that experience, then including that can be fine. Again, if the space permits within your one page, and if you don't think it is relevant and you don't have any other experiences and that's the one that you have, then include it. But then if it's not relevant and your pages are getting, your resume is getting longer than one page, then you want to remove it, okay? And then you want to also avoid, again, using those creative or template resumes. You want to avoid abbreviating, so do not abbreviate your months. If you can, write them out to the full name of the month, as this will keep your resume more professional. And then again, you want to avoid using acronyms. So you don't want to assume that your employer knows exactly what you're talking about. So try to write out the full name for that as well. Do not use acronyms. Okay, so keep in mind, alrighty, so be careful not to get thrown in the no pile, okay? So mentioned before, we talked a little bit about those ATS, those applicant tracking system. So while we have applicant tracking systems, once your resume gets past those, then they'll get into the employers or hiring managers' hands. So you want to keep in mind that they take about 30 seconds to 2 minutes reviewing a resume. And then, so this is why it's important to, keep your resume targeted to each position. Keep your resume between 1 or 2 pages in length. And then one, really, unless you have extensive experience, and then you want to avoid those attempts to stand out by using fancy fonts or color templates, which will likely backfire, okay? You want to make sure that you keep your resume as professional as possible. And then for our pro tip, we would like to say that, create a master resume, okay? A master resume is a document that contains all of your professional and academic information or experiences. As this is a living document, you want to make sure that you update as it needed. You can utilize this document or master resume as a cheat sheet to formulate your tailored or targeted resumes. So again, being able to pull your different experiences to your tailored resume as they are more relevant, versus having some of your other experiences. So leaving those other experiences within your master resume and then just focusing on, separating those relevant experiences, okay? And then again, as mentioned, this will be able to, using this master resume, you'll be able to provide content for targeted resumes. And then another tip is that I like to tell students to make sure that they save their resume as a PDF document before submitting them on their applications, because I've seen it a lot of times where students will use a Google Doc to create their resume, and then they'll save it and send it over and then mess up their alignment. So again, making sure that you save it as a PDF file before submitting those to employers will be very helpful, and then help with, not taking away from what you have worked so hard to build your resume. Okay. And so wrapping it all up, this is some information about how to make an appointment to meet with us career consultants here in the University Career Center. So following these steps on Handshake to create an appointment with one of us. And then you can also submit your resumes through Resume Editor if needed. for us to review your resumes as well. But you can always follow the steps on Handshake to create an appointment with one of us here. And so thank you all for attending our resume writing workshop and presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at careercenter@utdallas.edu. And you all have a great day.